Hi, everyone, and welcome to another special Talking Insomnia episode. We have Christian with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. And just for our viewers, I like to share a little, quick backstory of how this episode happened. Well, really, you just left a comment actually on the YouTube channel, Christian, where you said, "Hey, I'd like to share my story," and we had a brief email discussion. And I said, "Yeah, I think this could be really helpful to share." So glad to have you here. And with that said, tell us your story. How did you start having trouble with sleep?
My sleep troubles started this past November when I started a new job. And basically, what had happened was the night before I started working, I had like an unusual type of night where I wasn't able to fall asleep. And what ended up happening is I had a sleepless night to where I just went to work with no sleep. And at that time, I didn't really think much of it because there's been times with like job interviews or something exciting, I'll break night because, I'll be excited or kind of anxious or something. But I didn't think too much of it. And within a couple of days, it seemed back to normal. But the night before work again, I noticed a similar thing happening where I was having problems tossing and turning and I wasn't able to fall asleep. It felt like I lost the ability to. And so that kind of resulted in me having another sleepless night. So I was thinking that maybe it was like stress from the new job or something else. But it kept progressing to the point where there was one night where I couldn't get to sleep. And if I think this is what hyper arousals are, it's like my heart started racing and my mind started spinning. And it was like I became really physically anxious at the thought that I couldn't, fall asleep. And I, would start pacing back and forth and going, I don't know, I just can't sleep. I just can't sleep. And it started turning. I thought it was a panic attack, but it didn't feel like a panic attack. It just felt like stress. Like my body was responding to the fact that I was stressing out that I couldn't sleep. And I found out later that's where hyperarousals are. And for like the next 3 months, it became really common for me not to get to sleep. Um, I started experiencing hyperarousals, weird things where I would go to my bedroom and my bed would give me physical anxiety. It's like my mind would start to race and my heart rate would go up, and it's like I would fill with adrenaline just going into my room. There would be multiple nights per week where I wouldn't sleep, or I would sleep as little as like 3 hours to an hour a night. And I was trying to solve it. I was doing all these things. I was researching if I had insomnia, like trouble sleeping. I was researching if I had a vitamin deficiency. I started going all the way to like these. I started going into thinking, oh, maybe I'm just a different chronotype, or I'm this or I'm that. I was trying everything. Like, do I have a sleep wake disorder? Do I have shift work disorder? I was just trying to figure out why exactly I couldn't sleep. And it's like, as that cycle started, the anxiety and the stress would continue to build until it was constantly on my mind. No matter where I went, I was thinking about why I couldn't sleep. Would I sleep tonight? Um, and it just became obsessive. That's all I could think or talk about. I was extremely worried about it. And I felt like I was broken, like physically. Like I thought something was wrong. Like overnight, I lost the ability to fall asleep. And that's kind of how it started. That was back in November, and things started looking up around February. So I was
Actually,
really sorry.
let's pause there, Christian. I think you told your story very, very nicely, and of course, sorry this happened, but we'll get to the nice part where things are getting better, of course, in a bit. But before we go there, I just want to ask you, like, you were doing all this research, and you were thinking, oh, maybe there's a circadian rhythm problem, sleep wake disorders. Now, were you doing things as well, like I don't know, changing your habits, taking supplements,
Oh
or
yeah.
anything like that?
Oh, like clockwork. Like at this time, I need to take melatonin, and then I need to shut everything down. And I was following all these ritualistic behaviors, thinking that it was like a physical ailment that I can correct, that to guarantee that I could sleep. So I was taking melatonin. I was taking Benadryl, and that was my mixture for a while. Was like 5 milligrams of melatonin with Benadryl, and I was trying all these different things to like guarantee that I could get to sleep, because the thought of not having sleep would just stress me out, and I wouldn't do. I started following like the classic CBT-I. I don't know if it's CBT-I or another form of sleep help, but I wasn't going in my room anymore. I was only using it for sleep. The minute I couldn't get out of bed, try to do something. So I was turning going to sleep into this very routine, ritualistic thing where I would have to do these certain things in order, and if I don't, then it'll be a bad night. And whenever it didn't work, it would the anxiety would increase even worse than it was last time. So it felt like this circle that never ended, where I was trying to do all these things, engaging in these behaviors, and if they didn't work out, not only would I not sleep at all, but I would be incredibly anxious, to where I'd be thinking, I got to figure this out, and it would just take the whole entire day away from me, because I'd be constantly trying to solve this like it was a computer problem or an equation. I was just trying to think of any possible way how to get back to sleep, because it was so weird. I never experienced that in my life. Everybody has trouble sleeping, but to the point where you feel like you lost the ability to, and a level of anxiousness that accompanies it was something I never felt before, where it was like I genuinely felt like I was threatened, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I wanted to ask you another thing, which was the initial. It was a job. Was it a job interview you said in November that
It
you had?
was, yeah, it was a job interview, but that's kind of when it started. Um,
And just I'm just curious, did you get that job?
yeah, I got the job. I still currently work there. So,
And which leads to sort of like I suspected so, and I congrats on getting the job, of course. But
well, thank
also,
you.
throughout this time, you continued to working. What were your days like?
Some of those days were, they were bad. Some of those days were bad because I feel like with insomnia, there's two halves to it. There's the emotional, intellectual side of it. Then there's the physical side. And physically, I would feel it was so weird. It's I wouldn't feel tired. It was like my body was constantly running. Like head wise, I would feel very foggy headed and out of it, but it was like physically, it was very anxious, very driven, very just on edge. And emotionally, it was very distressing. I was very scared. I was really scared. I didn't know what was happening to me. I thought there was something really wrong. And, the moods would go from extremely scared to depressed, because I feel like with insomnia sufferers, there there's this moment where they get really scared and they go, I must have broken myself. Like I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on with me. I don't know why I'm having issues. A couple months ago I was fine. And I it, it would depend if I didn't fight it and I just stayed up and tried to enjoy it, it wouldn't be as bad. But if I tossed and turned and got out of bed and paced around the house and constantly going to the bathroom or whatever, I would feel more physically exhausted doing that versus just being stationary. But those days were very rough. I think I was filled with more fear than anything, because there's a certain part of your mind that really holds on to the idea that you'll never sleep again. And I think that's the main thing that most people, that when they suffer through it, they think that. And it was pretty bad. I was feeling pretty hopeless. I was scared. I was trying everything I could to figure out what was going on with me, because it was such an overnight thing that happened that I never experienced it before. So some days were really rough. I'd go on no sleep, going to work, and then coming home and still not being able to sleep. So it would be this constant state of stress no matter how many hours I was up, and I was trying all these things to get to bed. And I was just in this constant state of problem solving all the time. I wouldn't talk about anything else. I wouldn't engage. How was your day? I was fine. And I would immediately just start going right back into talking and thinking about it. And it was just a very debilitating cycle that I felt like wasn't ending.
And did you ever go talk to a doctor or some other professional?
Yes, I got to the point where I was like, I'm gonna go get some blood work done. Oops, sorry. I'm gonna go get some blood work done. And because I was thinking this has to be, it's a deficiency. This is maybe a vitamin D, B12, magnesium. I was like listing every possible deficiency that can be associated with trouble sleeping. And I remember I explained it to my primary care doctor that I was having issues sleeping. Oh, this reminds me. I even thought I had ADHD at a certain point, because this is going down the story. Because they say individuals with ADHD have differential, sleep wake cycles. So I was just going down that road as well after the blood work. But he thought it was stress related, and he goes, "Oh, I think it's just this new job. It's stress related." And I was like, "This is not the job. It's not stress related. There's something wrong here. Like, I don't understand what's going on." And when the blood work came back, he was like, "Oh, everything's fine. There's nothing wrong. Everything seems to be okay." And I'm like, "Well, I'm thinking I have undiagnosed ADHD. So do you think you can refer me to a counselor?" He said, "Oh, yeah, sure." So I went to the counselor, got all that sorted out. Then I just started describing my sleep problems to him. And he was trying the usual thing that most people are used to. If you can't fall asleep, get out of bed, listen to something relaxing, and try to do all these things to get to sleep. And if you can't, just stay up. And but he was just trying to treat it in the usual way that most people know about, and I felt like that wasn't really working for me at all.
Yeah, I totally understand. Wow. Okay, so yeah, you described it as becoming a real struggle. Nothing's really helping, and now we're going towards, like, did you say that things started to change maybe in December? No, no,
This
no, no. It was 3 months, more by February, right?
February, and I think what happened is around that time I picked up Guy Meadows' book, How to Sleep Effortlessly Every Night.
I think it's. Oh, really? Isn't it the sleep book?
Yeah, the sleep book. I think. Oh, that's the subtext I read. Yeah, it's the sleep book. How to Sleep Effortlessly Every Night. And I listened to the audio book, and it helped me understand to an extent, what what was going on, but I still didn't grasp it. And that, like, which is crazy, because I feel like a lot of people have read his book and it clicked. Oh, okay, I see what's going on. But for me, I was so like, no, this can't be it. This has to be something else. It was that deep in my mind that I was like, no, it's not that. It's something else. So I continually kept researching and researching, and then I found your channel around, I think, about the end of February. Maybe the last 2 weeks around February is where I found your channel. And then I started watching your videos all day when I was at work. Every break I would just pull up a video, and I was trying to learn more about it. And what really inspired me to understand what exactly was happening was when I was watching a lot of recovery stories. Nina's specifically was the exact story that I went through, where she had no issues for years, and then one night something just triggered it. And her story really kind of inspired me to further understand and learn what was happening. Then I found Alina's story, and then I watched her YouTube channel too. And when I was watching their stories, and then I was watching your content about the hyperarousal and understanding the cycle of what's actually happening, it's kind of when I stopped treating it like it was a physical problem, and I started treating it like an anxiety or like a phobia, sort of. Because I I think people get confused with insomnia. I mean, what I'm experiencing, insomnia, I changed the acronym for it. I call it sleep anxiety, because that's what it feels like. Whatever you're anxious about, you'll hyperfixate on. And I kind of realized that insomnia is really sleep anxiety. So I had to muster the courage to stop taking everything I was taking and just face it head on, so to speak. And that's what I did. There was one point, I think it was I can't remember what specifically the video was called, but it was the one where you made the reference to war games.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
one. The something with the game, like but I know which one. Yeah,
Yeah, it was where he
a strange game. I think I called it like a strange game, something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was a strange game, and it was it was about how Matthew Broderick made the computer turn against itself, and the computer said the only way to win is not to play. And I didn't necessarily understand it, but then that's when I realized, I was like, in order for me to get past this, I'm going to have to find the courage to just try to not do anything anymore. That's the hardest part that most people, I didn't understand it either. I used to see comments, I just stopped caring and it stopped. I was like, how do I stop caring? This feels scary to me. I don't know how to stop caring, because it feels like a life or death situation that you go through every night. So to go, I'm not going to care. It feels foreign at first, but I realized that the cycle that kept happening is I wasn't willing to be awake. It was like I was running away from it. I was like constantly, because just the amount of different things I would try, from valerian root to other things and these methods, and that if it didn't work, it was like my body would fill with anxiety and I'd freak out. And then I realized, I'm keeping the anxiety here because I keep trying to fight it. I keep trying to prevent it from happening. And I just said, no matter what happens, I'm gonna listen to what they said, because that's what Alina and Nina and other people said they did. There was eventually a turning point where they were just like, you have to take a chance and just stop. And that it was kind of like looking down, like at the edge of a pool, and it's like 10 feet deep, and you're like, I don't know if I can do that. So I made the decision to stop and just try to no longer try to fight it anymore. And at first I was kind of nervous, because I got caught in the cycle so heavily for 3 months that I didn't know how to go back to living. I didn't know how to stop solving it or researching it, that I had to reintroduce just not trying to fix it anymore, all the way to the point of just going and hanging out in my room. Because I used to, my room is my hangout spot. So with the CBT-I method about not hanging out in your room, I was like, I don't think this can apply to me, because I hang out in my room, I work in my room, I watch TV in my room. So I have to learn to just go back in there and just enjoy it as and just enjoy being in my room and not trying to focus on sleep. And it's it's weird, because I forgot to mention this as well. Before this whole thing started, there was a lot of subconscious stress that I was going through when I left my last job, transitioning to this new job. So there was like a whole bunch of different things going on top of insomnia. And it's also within that same week where all the things I was stressing about, I just went, whatever happens, happens. I am going to do the best that I can. And whatever happens, I'm just going to allow it to happen. I can't spend time trying to worry or fix things. And it's like within the next day, it was just like that. It was like a switch turned on. And I was like, okay, that was a little weird. Maybe that was a fluke. And then it happened again. And I noticed there was like, it was happening effortlessly. It's like I wouldn't even remember. I wouldn't even go in my room with intentions of going to sleep. It was like knockout gas at a dentist that you just don't. I don't even remember passing out. Or before you were trying to create this perfect formula that would guarantee it instantly. Where this time it was like coming over me, and I didn't even know what happened. And at that point, I was still researching your videos, and I was still um, understanding, because trying to figure it out, because I feel like once you get started on that insomnia journey, it's kind of hard to not focus on it and research it so much. But I was so interested because I never dealt with it before that I was like, wow, this is something I've never even heard of. I didn't even know this could be a thing. And I think most of the time we accidentally create it without realizing it. Even people that have been normal sleepers their whole life, because we become so distressed that we're going through it. We think that if I do all these things, it won't happen anymore, or I can fix this like everything else. But it makes the problem worse, and you're like, I don't understand what I'm doing. It's like you're a car that's stuck in mud, and the wheel is spinning and it's getting deeper, and you're like, but I'm trying to do everything right. I don't understand how I'm making this worse. And from that point onward, it was just like happening naturally. And I think what made it better is it's very fear based. It is very fear based. Like, I think a lot of people with insomnia are so petrified of it that we just don't want, because with the amount of bad nights that happen with it, you automatically start to associate, if I'm awake for any period of time, it's instantly going to be a bad night, whether it be hyperarousals or your brain going off, or just all these sorts of things that you become dedicated to preventing from happening. Because the fatigue never bothered me. It was the whole being awake that was bad. It was very unpleasant. It was very uncomfortable, and it was scary. But it taught me that in order to overcome something you fear, you have to be willing to face it. You have to be vulnerable, and then that's when I understood what Guy Meadows was talking about in his chapter with acceptance, because that was the one thing that used to make me mad. Acceptance. I was like, okay, I accept I have insomnia. Okay, it's still not going away, and I wasn't realizing what the terminology for acceptance was. And I hope I can help people by saying this, because I know there's some people in the comments that are, the answer is right in front of their face, but they don't know. But acceptance is like, you no longer try to change what happens. If if you're awake at night and the hyperarousals are kicking in and your mind is spinning, you literally have to be as passive as possible and let your mind and body do whatever it needs to do while you don't try to change it. You kind of have to become a bystander. And I didn't realize that's what acceptance was. And then when I went back and reread his chapter, he was talking about, because I think acceptance is the biggest part to get past it. And it's, when I went back to his chapter, he was talking about how you choose to respond to your insomnia will determine its duration and how long it has an effect on you. And he was talking about, the more you resist it happening, the more ingrained and the more recurrent it, becomes, that it'll just keep, restarting, because you won't allow yourself to experience wakefulness. And the biggest way to accept it is if you're up, just because your video about befriending wakefulness, that really is key. I think that's the most important part, because when you make wakefulness a threat, it'll never go away, because your mind and brain will associate wakefulness, as, this is a time to be stressed, this is a time to be alert. Because I've realized that your brain is like the most receptive learning machine about how you react to certain situations. And I didn't realize that the more we resist it, your brain starts to learn that, okay, this is a serious threat to him, so I'm going to try to protect him now. And it picks up on that. And by choosing to respond to it differently, you're more or less teaching your brain there isn't a threat anymore. Because I feel like insomnia, it starts to act like how we react if we see a car speeding towards us, how we react if we're near a ledge. It literally thinks that wakefulness is a threat, and it's not something you can reason with. It's not something you can argue with, and it's not something you can physically fix. You have to expose yourself willingly to wakefulness and then not trying to fight it off. That's the only way, at least in my experience. how I got past it. And I didn't realize that's what was keeping me in the cycle. And once I started doing that, it was like it was happening without even realizing it. So, and that was back around, oh, something happened.
Oh, you're still
I'm sorry.
all good.
My time limit on my phone came on. That was around March is when it started happening. But since then it's been better. I've still had some hiccups, but it's gotten better.
That's so nice to hear. So nice to hear. And I was going to ask about that, but it sounds to me as if like things started getting easier thanks to all the learning you did and your willingness to face what you've been scared of.
Mm-hmm.
And but they, of course, yeah, everybody has some hiccups, but you feel I guess my question to you is this: for some, it feels like a sudden kind of realization, and then things were quite easy. Or for other people, say like, oh, it's more gradual, like little by little things got easier. But how has the process been for you so far?
It's been like gradual. It started building in March, and there's some speed bumps that I had. I feel like for me, a speed bump was if I couldn't fall asleep, even if I wasn't scared. It was so weird because Alina was right with the programming thing. That is really how it works. I would have nights where I could fall asleep, and then I would have like a speed bump where I couldn't. And the minute I couldn't, even if I wasn't thinking about it, it was like my mind would already start, okay, did we do this today? Why isn't wearing? It would automatically start doing that. And that's one of the comments I left on your previous video about what is a speed bump, because that's what was happening. I was having a good set of nights and then a bad one, a good set of nights and a bad one. And it was a very gradual process. I kind of still had to unteach myself certain, habits and ways of thinking, because it's very easy to slip back into that where you start focusing on it again. And I wouldn't say it was abrupt, but it was gradual, and then it became abrupt. It seemed like it was happening because I realized I didn't have to do anything anymore. Like I didn't have to fight it. I didn't have to run from it. I didn't have to prevent it, because I feel like that's what with insomnia, you really start playing a defensive position over everything. You're so dedicated to trying to not let that happen that I realized I don't really have to do anything. I don't really have to engage this anymore if I don't want to. And that's when it started picking up. It was around March, and then April it seemed fine. I had a speed bump actually the day before this. I wasn't able to sleep at all. Like, I didn't sleep at all. And when you choose to respond to it differently, I feel like recovery is when you're no longer afraid of it and you're willing to go through it. I had an issue where I didn't sleep at all. I don't know if I was dehydrated or didn't have coffee. Had coffee too late, but I didn't give it much thought. And, I just learned, I was like, all right, I'm going to watch TV. I'm going to look at my phone. And then I was like, well, it's an hour before I have to get up. Okay, I'm just going to get up. And I worked the whole day and I was fine. You feel off. And then I came home and I had no intentions of going to sleep. I'm just going to watch TV. And then I woke up in the middle of the night at like 2 or 3 and it was pitch black. And how did I get here? But I feel like recovery is when you're no longer afraid. And speed bumps are very natural. And I feel like speed bumps you have a bad night and you instantly go back into trying to fix it. And I realize you literally have to try to give up as much as you can. That the only responsibility that you have is trying to tell your brain it's no longer a threat.
Yeah, I have very little to add. You said so many things so nicely, Christian, and just maybe a few comments. It's interesting how you said you went back to reading the sleep book by Guy Meadows there, the ACT book, and then after and then it sort of makes sense to you more clearly after some experiences and some more education. And and that's, I think that's the nice thing we have, the luxury we have here, is that we have so much content you can go through, and you can take your time, and that can be really helpful. And but anyway, you did wonderful work in teaching yourself there. So I guess I'll just ask you two more questions, and one of them is if you could travel back in time to where you started having trouble sleeping, or you were in the thick of it, what would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself to enjoy it as much as you can, because that's where the slippery cycle starts. I think it starts because when we become adults, because when you're a kid, you naturally do all this stuff naturally, and you don't really think about it. It's just, oh yeah, I'm up, I'm gonna do this and that. But when you become an adult, due to responsibilities and work obligations and whatnot, you become panicked. Oh, I'm still up, I gotta try to go to sleep. And it's interesting because my father, who he was a great help in this too. I was watching your videos and Alina's videos, and it was almost if my dad was like an on-site coach. He went through something very similar when he was around my age. So I would do all these things. He's like, you can't do that, watch a movie. I'm like, watch a movie? What do you mean watch a movie? Like, I don't I gotta go to bed. What do you mean watch a movie? And then I wouldn't do that. And then I go, oh, I can't sleep. And he's like, don't react to it, man. Just go with it. And I was like, how are you being so passive to this sort of thing? But he went through a similar issue when he started a job too, when I was born. And he told me a story. He didn't sleep for 4 days straight. And he had a similar thing where he was freaking out about his sleep too. And that's the one thing he kept repeating, is just enjoy the time that you're up. And I never understood that. But if I had to go back and tell my previous self what to do, is really to enjoy wakefulness, because sleep is the one thing you cannot force. That was something I was trying to do. It was like I was trying to shut myself down every night to guarantee that I would get good sleep. But and it's okay to be scared, because I think a lot of with insomniacs, we kind of feel bad sometimes for being scared. But it's okay to be scared, but the only way through is to go through it. And I think we don't realize that until months down the road, that it wasn't until we gathered the courage, like, okay, I'm gonna try to do this. I'm gonna try to let go, and whatever happens, happens. And a quote that I hope everybody can take from this podcast, that I hope that they like, that it's my mantra for today, just is by Mark Twain: do what you fear the most, and the death of fear is certain. And I feel like that can really apply with that if you allow yourself to experience it and not try to fight it anymore, the fear of it will start dissipating, and it won't really be such a cloud over your mind anymore.
Super nice one. And he actually segues perfectly to sort of the last question I have, which is, have you, this is still, we're talking pretty recent, like pretty recently after things started changing. So you may not have experienced this yet, but I'm going to ask you anyway, have you seen that what you learned from like the sleep struggle from insomnia, have you seen that can apply to other aspects of life?
Oh, it's such a beautiful life lesson. I know most people, I know some may look at me like I'm crazy, but if I had to go through it all over again, I would. Because I feel that for those that haven't experienced, I feel like anxiety is one thing, but I feel like fear is another thing. And I feel like that insomnia is an excellent introduction on fear and how to overcome it. Because before that, I was never really scared of anything. Like, I was never afraid or fearful of something. But it does apply to a lot of different areas in life. It's often the things that we're afraid of the most that we have to go through. in order to overcome it. You know, if you want to get past something, and Guy Meadows talks about this in his book about acceptance, is it's not when you willingly allow yourself to experience the uncomfortable things to happen that you can get past it. And it can be a real motivating life lesson that you can apply to anything. And the amount of power that you feel afterwards from conquering your fear, it can make you feel more confident in yourself. And if you ever have a situation arise that you're afraid from, you know, you'll instantly, I know I'm scared, and I'm going to go ahead and do this. And I think I saw another quote, and it's about fear or courage. Courage isn't the absence of fear; it's the mastery. And I think it can apply to a lot of different areas of life. And it changed my life head-wise.
So glad to hear this. I mean, of course, like to anyone out there, like I all I do is like really try to, you know, reduce people's suffering. But you know, when you learn so much from it, like you have, etc. You know, I just want to say I'm so glad to hear this, Christian, that you found exactly this, because that's what I really hope for anyone that's part of our community. Anyone that tunes in here, it can really teach us so much about life in general. So amazing. And by the way, you know, most guests I kind of know a little bit, but I knew very little about you and your story, Christian. But it turned out to be like a really rich place for learning. Then I think so much you said in such a nice way will really help our community. So I
wanted to return that when I really wanted to help everybody once I started getting better, because the common theme that seems to happen is we keep treating it biologically. We keep thinking it's a physical biological problem. The physical responses to hyperarousals, that's real. I felt that. But I wanted to show and help everybody that it's our fear of it that keeps it returning. That, and in order to get past it, you have to kind of face it head on, like the fearless method you were talking about.
Yeah, again, very insightful. I believe this is so true. And yeah, so I'm kind of extra grateful whenever somebody's willing to actually, you know, be a guest and talk about this. Like, and nothing helps in a more powerful way. So again, super glad you're here, Christian. I will say thank you, and be in touch.
All right, thank you for having me.
Bye, everyone.